This is the Youth Soccer Revolution Podcast, episode number 12. Hey, what's up, everyone? Thanks for tuning back in to the Youth Soccer Revolution Podcast. I want to open up today by apologizing for the last month. I've been extremely busy lately. I realized that our last episode was published on October 19th. It's been well over a month. Me and my wife are fortunate enough to have our third child come into our lives. It's been a blessing. I was also involved with my high school team, which reached the state regional final. So I was really busy, but I'm back on and hopefully bringing you a lot of good content that you can use. Thank you again to those that have reached out to me asking about the podcast and if the episodes were going to continue. Of course, as long as they're helping someone out there, I'm willing to continue putting out content for you guys. So again, I want to thank you again for all your patience. With Thanksgiving coming up, I want to give a special thanks to all our guests that have been on the show and all the future guests that will come on. I know it's time consuming for everyone that comes on here and trying to schedule it. And I appreciate all the time the guests take to come on here and share their information and their knowledge, their journey and their experiences with us. Because I know it's definitely helping out very many people out there, because I hear a lot from you guys. And then I also want to thank all the listeners. Of course, without the listeners, I would just be putting out content out there for no one. So I do appreciate the feedback from all the listeners, and I know you guys take the time as well to download the podcast or get on Stitcher Radio or iTunes or the website and listen to the podcast. So I do appreciate you guys as well. So today we have the pleasure of speaking to Chris Gluck, spelled Gluck, and Chris has a special way to evaluate team performance. His website is called possessionwithpurpose.com, and you can go on possessionwithpurpose.com and read all about his work that he does. He has trademarked a new way to evaluate the team performance, which we will discuss during the interview. But again, just bringing it back to the Possession with Purpose, which is the reason why I wanted to have Chris on here. During the process of player development in soccer, we always discuss about how much the wins matter with when they're young. This is a tool that Chris provides for us, a way to evaluate the performance of the team, whether it's a win or a loss. And I know a lot of the times we discuss with kids about how we've seen the improvement anyway, but now we have a way to measure that and help us improve the development of the team and evaluate the performance. Possessionwithpurpose.com, and as you'll hear, we'll get right into it with Chris. Again, I want to thank Chris for coming on the show and providing his tools that I'm sure will definitely help many of you out there. Today we have the pleasure to speak with Chris Gluck, who is the owner of PossessionWithPurpose.com. We're honored to have him here on the podcast and to talk a little bit about his work he does at PossessionWithPurpose.com and some of the other projects that he's working on. So, Chris, we told the listeners just a little bit about you, but can you go ahead and tell us a little bit more about yourself and some of the other projects you're working on?
Sure, can do. And first things first, Ernesto, thanks very much for the invitation. It's always a pleasure to talk football.
Absolutely.
So in terms of kind of who I am, from a soccer standpoint, I learned the game of soccer when I lived in England for about 10 years. As you do, I suppose, when you're a parent and your kids like soccer, you kind of get involved in the sport to try to help them as best as you can. And for the first, I guess, year or two that my boys were learning soccer, probably around the ages of 5 and 3, I think it is, maybe even 5 and 4. Used to go to training sessions and just watch them have a kick about and in a kind of an organized way, which when I see things here out where I live, it was probably much more organized in England than it is here. But anyhow, over the course of 2 or 3 years volunteering to help and learning the game, watching plenty of it on telly, I ended up going to North City FC, getting my FA, English FA Youth Certificate, which is a C license. I'm not too sure what the equivalent is in the United States. Some might consider it a E, a D, a C. To be honest with you, I don't really know. And from there, I started a head coach, and eventually put together a club. I think at the max operating conditions before I actually stepped down from the club because we're getting ready to leave the United Kingdom. I think we had about 140 or 150 lads and probably 2 or 3 girls. And we had 6 teams. We had a sponsor. And that was U13, U12 on down to U6. So in saying we had a sponsor, what that meant is kids didn't pay for their kits. They didn't pay for the uniforms. As a matter of fact, the only thing that they paid for, because they have national health insurance in England, was £1 training fee for a training session. And that was once or twice or 3 times a week, depending on conditions. And then £1 per game to put in the kit for the referee. So it was kind of inexpensive, and at the same time, we didn't usually travel more than 5 or 10 miles, maybe 15 at a push, and we played in a league with 10 teams, I think it was. And then if you do well, then you can progress and get into other competitions. But within a very small area around Thetford, Barnum Bulldogs was actually the name of the football club. We didn't have to travel 50 or 100 or 150 or 300 miles for a competitive game. You only had to travel like 10 or 15 miles at the most. But eventually I had to step down as the general manager as well as the president of the football club because we were moving back to the States. We moved back to Seattle, basically, southeast Seattle, Renton/Kent. And we hooked up with IX United FC. And after about a year there of the lads playing, I latched on as an assistant coach and then eventually was a head coach for my youngest son's team for about 2.5, 3 years, I think it is. And then I just kind of got tired. The travel was wicked hard. And even though I had a license and had pretty good experience in coaching youth, both in the England youth system as well as here in the States, I actually did it on volunteer basis. I didn't get paid. It was all strictly out of the love for the game and the love of supporting my son. So I packed it in then and didn't really get engaged with soccer again, even though the MLS was around, especially up in Seattle. I didn't get engaged until I moved back down here to Portland. And probably about 3 years ago, I guess it was, there were a couple of articles, and, sometimes the media, not all the time, but sometimes the media can misinterpret and draw conclusions that are kind of wishy-washy. Well, I kind of commented in a couple of areas where I thought maybe that the analysis was more subjective than objective. And the next day I got an email from the Columbian newspaper out of Vancouver, Washington, and they asked me to blog. And it probably took me 2 or 3 weeks to finally say yes, because, having been there, and Ernesto, you volunteer time, you know it's a big time commitment. So having, been there, it's like, well, okay, if I'm going to do this, 1, I need to make sure I have the time, and 2, I'm not going to go in and half step when I do it. So what that means to me as an analyst is I'm going to have data, and I'm going to be able to have to interpret it and watch MLS soccer quite a lot, especially to get to know the teams. I mean, having watched none, I didn't know the players for any teams. But with Portland and the fact that it's on Soccer City, USA, there's quite a huge following here. As a matter of fact, it's probably as big, if not bigger, than some of the small towns in England, or maybe, as large as Norwich City or Ipswich Town or Stevenage or a town of, that basic population.
Mm-hmm.
So in doing that, I started to write and decided I was going to...
And when was that? Sorry, Chris, didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, that's fine.
When was that?
That was probably about 3 years ago. I think it was he was about 2 minutes and 2 seconds after John Spencer got sacked as the head coach for the Timbers. That's probably the best way to set the timing. And I'll be honest, the article that got under my skin was an article about John Spencer, and it was very subjective and very judgmental. And John Spencer was a quality player in Europe. He's a smart guy. He knows soccer, and he had his own way of doing business, his own approach. And he'd learned that through years and years of playing soccer. And the author of the article just pretty much disparaged everything about John Spencer. And it's like, how can somebody that knows nothing about soccer be that critical? And so, I took offense to it, I guess, is the best way to say it. So fast forward to now, I've been writing for the Columbian newspaper out of Vancouver with a sports blog for the Timbers for 2.5, 3 years now. I'd latched on to a couple of other blogs in and out for maybe a couple, 2 or 3 months here and there, but finally decided, I think it's time to put together my own blog site. So I did. That was probably done about less than a year ago, maybe, and that's possessionwithpurpose.com, and that's where the majority of my articles are offered up. I also write occasionally for socceryanks.com. I've actually just been asked and accepted to write for Stumptown Footy, the SB Nation blog, so my articles will begin to appear on there for the Portland Timbers as well.
Which one is that again? Which one was with?
It's Stumptown Footy. www.
How do you spell that?
STUMPTOWNFOOTY.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. Stumptown. Okay.
Stumptown Footy. Yeah. .com. It's an SB Nation. They've got Sounder at Heart. They've got. It's a national blog set up for, I think, just about every sporting franchise in the United States. Plus overseas too, so it's a pretty big blog.
Cool.
The readership's pretty big. So that's how that's kind of gone. And in between, probably, maybe in the last year or so, I decided that I was going to look to get copyright for the work that I was doing, because it's unique and to be honest with you, just from my viewpoint, I don't think there's another index out there that is as comprehensive without using points earned in the league table. So, pretty pleased about how that's gone. But, it's, you never know how things go, and, somebody else is going to come along that's smarter. So, you ride the wave as best as you can, and you just see how things go. But, I mean, it's public domain data. So like MLSsoccer.com, that's where I get the information. And I just put it together and use my training, my background, my experience, and I benchmark with other professionals in the MLS soccer industry on the analysis that I do. So Like, for example, I did one on the Philadelphia Union, and the analysis that I offered up on how the Union defense changed based upon statistics, it showed the same sort of information that I had confirmed verbally by another individual that knows a bit more about the Philadelphia Union. And then I've had confirmation from other folks. So, that's a warm fuzzy. That's a good thing. That when you can put that sort of information together, you get responses back that say good analysis. So that's where I'm at today.
Good, and we're glad you're here with us as well. So tell us a little bit about why a coach should start reading the blog. How can it help them become a better coach?
Well, as you mentioned that, I actually wrote an article probably, maybe 2 weeks ago, titled "Getting Better as a Youth Soccer Coach," and it attempts to kind of put together the basic steps of what possession with purpose is all about. I'll kind of share that briefly here, anyhow. And actually, what I'll do is I'll refer to the article while I'm talking with you, Ernesto.
Yeah, and we're going to put a link on the show notes to that article.
Oh, super.
As well.
Okay, so here's the thing. There's 6 things that I consider to be in the bell curve, which is the normal activity that occurs in a game of soccer. And that's 1, gain possession of the ball, 2, move the ball, 3, penetrate the opponent's defending final third, 4, generate a shot that ends up on target, which is 5, and then 6, scores a goal, gets past the goalkeeper. From a statistical measurement standpoint, what this translates to is need to understand possession percentage, need to understand passing accuracy across the entire pitch, need to understand the percentage of penetration with respect to all that possession across the entire pitch, need to understand the shots taken per the percentage of penetration. Then you need to understand the shots on goal per shots taken, and then the goals scored per shots on goal. And the thing about the strategic index is it's actually 3 of them. You have the attacking possession with purpose index, which is how you do as a team against your opponent. And then I flip the percentages over, and then I look to see how the opponent does against you, as in your defending possession with purpose. And when you combine the 2 together, you get what's called the composite possession with purpose index, which is the one that I offer up the most often for people to kind of wet the whistle before digging into a specific type of analysis. So from a youth head coach standpoint, these are things that you can do even at the age of 11 or at the age of 12 with parents and other assistant coaches. You can put a parent at the center of the pitch and say, hey, I want you to track the number of passes attempted and the number of passes completed for our team for the entire pitch. And then ask another parent, hey, I'd like you to stand at the center of the pitch and do exactly the same thing, but for the opponent. Now what you've got is you've got possession percentage for the entire game, and then you've got your passing accuracy for the entire game for both teams. Okay, so then the next thing is you put a parent down by the defending final third and another parent up by the attacking final third, and you say, right, okay, each parent, what I want you to do is chart the number of passes attempted and passes completed within and into the opponent's defending final third, as well as into your own defending final third. Now what you've got is a percentage of penetration. Because at the end of the day, there's teams, and, I taught kids even at the age of 11. The objective here, 1, is to gain possession of the ball, and then 2, move the ball.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing in that second step that says you have to penetrate immediately. The first thing is move the ball after you gain possession of it. To me, and actually the statistics prove this out for Major League Soccer as well as some other of the bigger teams like Bayern and Barcelona and Chelsea. They don't penetrate as much as you might think they do. They're very patient in their penetration. So penetrating the final third isn't the objective specifically. The first thing after you gain possession is to control the ball and then move it. But eventually, as you do, you penetrate the final third because you want to do what? You want to score a goal.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have your parents track those passes completed, passes attempt, you've got the penetration side sorted out. Then you get another parent in there to keep track of shots taken. And then chart whether or not those shots taken are on goal, which means the goalkeeper has to make a save or didn't make a save in the shot went in, and then goal scored. Now what you've got is with 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I don't know, maybe up to as many as 10 parents, what you've just done is you've now collected all the major components associated with the possession with purpose index. And you as a head coach can learn from that and begin to target improvement, like passing accuracy. That's extremely critical. Individual players sometimes might have lower passing percentages based upon their position versus other individual players. So I don't track individual percentages. And I'll give you a good example. A player that plays midfield is going to get maybe 80 to 100 touches per game. And usually those midfield passes, for the most part, are short passes that move the ball here, there, and everywhere. So passing accuracy for a good midfielder is going to be high. It should be around 80 to 85. But a fullback, a player that plays right back or a player that plays left back, on a team that crosses, they're not going to have that same passing accuracy percentage on a regular basis. And the reason why is that they're playing in balls that are a bit chancier, a bit, maybe down to luck or bad position or good position. So there's less likelihood that the cross is going to be a complete pass. So it's important that if a coach does track individual passing accuracy, excuse me, he or she really need to filter it to understand that fullbacks versus central midfielders versus strikers versus center backs, they're all going to have different passing accuracy kind of patterns. So that kind of captures the approach in how a coach might use it to help get better. At the end of the day, it's all about the players getting better.
Yeah, and Chris, that was going to be my next question. If a coach is able to understand this and implement this, tell me how it can help player development.
Well, okay, for one thing, and this gets back to my filter of learning the game in England, which is different than learning the game here, I think, as a youth coach. Mm-hmm. It's 100% competitive in England. Okay, and by that I mean there's no carrying 18 players on a team and playing all 18 players and shuffling players in and out. That doesn't happen. At least it didn't when I was a head coach. None of that. So it's very, 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 very competitive. And so when you have that high level of competition, you're training the kids that it's not about being entitled to play. It's about getting better. Because as you get better, you get more playing time. That's how we did it. So with respect to, individual training, if you got 40 or 50% passing accuracy as a team, then I think the coach probably ought to be spending 45 minutes to an hour each training session on small-sided passing. First touch, one-touch pass, two-touch pass. And, you take that from kind of a slow development kind of stage to quicker and quicker and quicker. And by getting quicker, you move closer together. By making it slower, you move further apart. But, having, 8 or 9 or 10-year-old kids that are 15 yards apart, that's really not going to help. You need to have them like 5 to 10 yards apart, really. No more than that. And then put them in a group of 6 and have one in the center. And the one in the center, well, the intent there is there to try to defend, intercept, tackle, etc. So you're training the quick touch, the pressure, the first touch, the one touch, the second touch passing. Okay, and then you're also training a little bit about defensive spacing too for that individual player as they rotate in and out. So that would be something that would help an individual kid get better at playing soccer. And then if your shots taken are like 30 in a game and you only put like 5 of those shots on goal, well, that kind of tells me that the head coach is not properly teaching the kids how to strike. And that has to do with the position of the back, it has to do with the laces of the boot, or the inside or the outside of the boot, has to do with the head position, but it also has to do with panic. And this gets back again to that patience that I spoke about with Major League Soccer teams, or Bundesliga teams, or La Liga teams, or EPL, or even the World Cup teams. There's patience, and the more patience you have sometimes, the more time and space you can create to take a shot that has a better chance of being on goal, because the striker's got the ability to take an extra touch or 2 to put the shot on goal. The opposite of that is, and this is where the first touch comes in real handy, is, when you play at the very highest level, sometimes the striker's only going to get half a second on the ball. So at the same time, you also got to be able to do it quickly if the opportunity presents itself. And the more of the habit of training the kids on how to strike the ball with, knees over the ball, the back straight, you're not leaning back. When a ball goes over the crossbar, first thing you should know as a head coach is the player's leaning back. Or they spooned it because they didn't strike it. They just spooned it. They just got their toe way underneath the ball. But usually it has to do with the back. So those are kind of 2 attacking things that I would say that could help from a individual standpoint. From a defensive standpoint, this is kind of an interesting thing. And you notice I didn't ask, and I don't ask for coaches to keep track of tackles or interceptions or clearances or things like that. And the reason why I don't, it gets back to a discussion I had with Ben Napper, who's the head of statistics at Arsenal Football Club this past summer, plus a couple guys from Prozone, which is one of the top statistical companies in the world for almost every major sport in the world. And what we talked about is sometimes the statistics that are not measured have more value than the statistics that are measured. So as an example, if a player averages 10 clearances a game, a lot of people might think that player's a really good center back, center half, central defensive midfielder, however you want to call him. But here's the thing. What if they're not clearing it when the opportunity presented itself 20 other times in the game? And one of those 20 other times in the game is when the opponent scores a goal. Well, what's happened is the player gets credit for 10 clearances, and, he goes up against all the other center backs in the league, and he's got 10 more clearances, or he's got 3 more clearances per game than some other center back. But that some other center back is playing for a team that's got a lower goals against. So would you think that the center back for the team that has higher goals against and gets more clearances is a better center back than the player who has individual statistics that are lower, but the team goals against are also lower? See, that's the nuance of individual statistics.
Yeah.
They lead you in a direction that is really, really dangerous. I'll give you another example. If a player has 10 recoveries in a game, which is mean they've run back to capture the ball to stop the opponent from penetrating. Well, okay, that's a good thing at the moment, but as a head coach, you need to ask yourself, why has my central defensive midfielder got so many recoveries every game? Well, the reason why is because the other midfielders or the center backs are out of position, one, or two, the passing accuracy when you do have the ball is no good and you turn over the ball in the wrong place. So again, you got a high recovery statistic and or a high tackle statistic, but yet it's really because of poor defensive positional play. So for me, when I look at the statistics on the defensive side, I'm not taking in the noise from those individual statistics because, to be honest, they don't really mean a whole lot. The ones that mean something, and this gets down to striking or saving shots on goal, is shots taken, shots on goal, goals scored, because your strikers need to be good strikers. And two, goals saved versus goals not saved, and that's your goalkeeper. They're the first line, the striker's the first line of attack, and the goalkeeper is the first line of defense. I should say last line. So those defensive statistics are good, but even goals saved is deceptive. Because when a team is more patient in setting up the opportunity to take a shot on goal as a whole, they're going to get more time and space. And if they get more time and space, it doesn't matter what the goalkeeper is going to do. If I'm 3 feet away from the goalkeeper and I got a yard of space on the near post and I got nobody around me, I'm going to bang it to the near post because the goalkeeper has less time to react. Or I'm going to bang it to the far post with the opportunity that maybe it doesn't go in, but a teammate runs onto it. So, even the location of the shot sometimes can be a bit deceiving. So I don't even track shot location. To me, I got penetration, I've got the creation of a shot, and what's even more interesting is I look at the English Premier League. I do analysis for that league. I do analysis for Bundesliga. I do analysis for La Liga. In my opinion, the EPL is probably the best of the three, but those are the three top leagues in the world. Plus, I do analysis for the UEFA Champions League, which I think is the best competition outside of the World Cup. And even the World Cup, I did analysis. And in all of those leagues, plus Major League Soccer, the average shots on goal for winning teams is just over 5. And the average goal scored for winning teams is just over 2. In every single one of those leagues, those statistics are the same. So what matters? What matters is how you set up the shot, how you penetrate, how well you pass, and what's your possession percentage as a whole. Because at the end of the day, a striker in the Bundesliga, he puts 5, if he takes 10 shots, 5 shots are going to be on goal, 2 goals are going to score. That same striker is most likely going to have roughly the same success in another league. So I hope that helps from the individual side of the, side of the coin.
Oh yeah, definitely. With possession with purpose, are you also doing consulting?
No, even though I got a small business, I don't actually do it, and it's more down to time than it is anything else. I've got a regular full-time job working for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. I've been a military analyst for quite some period of time. I was active duty as well as doing it as a retired civil servant working for the Army Corps of Engineers. So,
you're busy.
I'm busy. And I like to golf, and the missus likes to golf. So I don't spend all my wee hours outside of work sitting in front of my computer playing with numbers. So I don't do that.
Yeah. So, and then we also heard that you did present at the World Conference on Science and Soccer.
I did, yeah. I was invited to speak. They had it here in Portland. It was kind of interesting how it came about. I just got an email out of the blue from the president of the World Conference on Science and Soccer saying, "Hey, we're doing this in the United States for the first time, and there's nobody that we've got on the agenda that can talk soccer statistics in America. And would you do it?" And I took a few days to think about it, probably more than a few days, but I said yeah. Eventually, I said yeah, and then I had a quick turn to put together the package. That's actually up on my Possession with Purpose site as well. It's just called World Conference on Science and Soccer. My presentation, and actually, out of all the articles that I've written on my site, that one has probably 5 to 6 times as many views as any other article, and just kind of explain the demographics of my site. I'd say 60 to 65% of my readers are from the United States. The other 35% are from everywhere else in the world. I've got readers from all here. I'll just kind of pull it up real quick. Not that it's to kind of give you just a summary of the distribution of my readership. United Kingdom is second, Canada is third, Spain's fourth, Ireland's fifth, Brazil sixth, Australia, then Portugal, Italy, Austria, France, Netherlands, and about 60 countries later, or 70 countries later, I've got Iceland, Honduras, Estonia, and the Cayman Islands. So the readership is pretty extensive. Not all those countries have the same number of views. The United Kingdom is second in that, and then Canada, Spain, and Ireland. So the information, the analysis appeals to a wide audience. And to me, I would interpret that as to a wide soccer engaged audience is how I kind of interpret that.
Mm-hmm. And then what about the publication in the Sports Science Journal?
I just actually got an email from the Conference on Science and Soccer president, and that's kind of still in the mix. We're not too sure how that's going to take shape. I might get published in there, or I might not. They're kind of deciding what the tenor of the overall book is going to be like. So, I don't know if team statistics are going to be part of that or not. If they are, I'll have to work pretty hard. I think they're looking at 5,000 or 6,000 words for a document to go in the publication. But, I'm not going to hold my breath on that. If it happens, great. If it doesn't, that's fine.
Yeah, and still, with the World Conference on Science and Soccer and the Sports Science Journal, you're doing a lot of good things. So people definitely need to go out there and check out your blog.
Well, I appreciate that. It's always good to hear feedback, whether it's negative or positive, sometimes that doesn't matter, but good feedback is always a good thing. Thanks, Ernesto.
Yeah. And then I think I see the World Conference on Science and Soccer presentation, so I'll put a link to that as well. Or again, they can just go on your blog and find it there as well.
Yeah, if you're going to do that, the other one that I'd recommend would be Possession with Purpose, Revised Introduction. And that one's less detailed than the original introduction and explanations. I found it useful to kind of simplify things a little bit. When I first wrote it, I was in a statistical kind of mood, and I thought, after referencing it, a number of times, it's like, maybe I need to, cut this down a little bit and just hit the major points. So, the revised introduction attempts to do a better job of that. And then the getting better as a youth soccer coach kind of feeds into that too. So, yeah.
And so, and I'm just thinking, Chris, with the information you gave on the Possession with Purpose and trying to track all the passes and and the thirds. Can this work with younger age groups who play, let's say, 7-on-7 or 9-on-9?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I suppose it might have a lot to do with the size of the pitch, too. I mean, if you're not playing on a full-size pitch, but you're playing on a three-quarter size pitch, then, I think there's still value in differentiating between the final third on both ends of the pitch. If you're playing on a half-size pitch, I don't know if I'd call it final third. I'd kind of say, maybe it might be better if you do the pitch in quarters, as opposed to thirds. That might make it easier to kind of differentiate between the intent to penetrate and penetrate versus not the intent to penetrate, but just to move the ball.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's helpful.
Yep. Yeah, no, I understand what you mean by that.
Okay.
So, I think this is important because, as coaches, we always talk about developing players and, that the score doesn't matter as much as the development of players. But if the coaches are truly concerned with the development, then this is a good way to track the development of their players and their team and how they're moving from one game to the next, if you're able to track it this way.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing about getting better as a youth head coach, the one thing I said early on, but I didn't kind of go into detail on it too much, was training plan. If even if you're a volunteer, you ought to have a training plan. You ought to be able to separate. Okay, here's the scenarios where we're going to do passing. Here's the scenarios where we're going to do striking. And here's the scenarios we're going to look to pass and strike as part of, competition, friendly competition with the kids. The other thing is the head coach doesn't belong on the pitch. The head coach belongs on the sideline. And that's where coaching versus direction come into play. To prepare kids for games, the coach should be on the sideline for the training session. And the reason why is when you observe something that's not good, you take the approach as a coach to begin to ask questions to get the kids to invest their energy, time, and knowledge in the game. You don't tell them what they've just done wrong. You get them to tell you what they've just done wrong, and then you get them to tell you what they need to do better. And the only verbal conversation that's going on there is reinforcement, asking questions. And then if it's not specifically stating you're leaning back, it's demonstrating the proper strike and then asking the question, where's the position of my back? Where's the position of my knee? So you're not telling them what to think or how to think. You're getting them to tell you how they're thinking. And, that I know that's hard for some people when it comes to recreation. But, there's one or two kids, maybe out of 11 or 12 or 15, that might want to advance. And, the more you give them the whole picture of the game of soccer, the better their chance to advance. It's not about the soccer coach advancing. It's not about the soccer coach's ego. It's about the soccer coach sacrificing time and energy to help kids get better.
Yeah.
I probably stole the thunder because I think that's one of the questions you might be asking me later on, Ernesto, but sorry about that.
No, that's fine. Anything else that you're working on that we should know about, or that you think that this can help coaches with?
Well, as a matter of fact, I've just started my end-of-season analysis. I did one on the Seattle Sounders called Road Warriors. They had 8 wins on the road. They were pretty dominant on the road as well as home. And when I did the analysis, there's a difference in tactic that appears when you look at the team statistics that you might not normally get if you just watch them play. So, I did that on the Seattle Sounders. I just did one on the Chicago Fire. That one's called Candle Burned at Both Ends. And, that one's probably a bit more harsh than the Seattle Sounders one. But, I'm a professional and these guys are professionals and, they got to be big boys. And, it's pretty critical, the tactics used that show up when you look at the body of statistics over the course of the year. So, that one's not going to be an easy one for some people to read, but, the folks in Chicago have loved it. I've had nothing but retweets and people favoriting or just saying, great or liking the article. And, I don't even live in Chicago, one. Two, I've only maybe watched one Chicago Fire game. But I've used the team statistics that I collect to draw conclusions that people who watch the Fire play every single game are saying, spot on, great analysis. And, I'm not saying that to pat myself on the back. It's more about, if you understand the game, you ought to be able to interpret what you see without misleading others. And so, that's what I've attempted to do. And the next one in the queue, which I'm just actually starting tonight, is going to be about the Houston Dynamo. Dominic Kinnear is moved on. Now he's going to be with San Jose. That's 4 coaches in the red zone of my index, which is the bad zone, that have been sacked or moved on this year. And 5 of the bottom 6 teams in my index from last year in the red zone had their coaches changed too. And the one coach who didn't change was Olsen from DC United. And when I did my statistical analysis, even though they had a really, really bad year last year, it ended up showing that they really just needed a couple new strikers and maybe a shore up on the defensive side of the pitch with maybe a player or two. And, they bought 2 new strikers. They brought in Johnson. They brought in Espindola. They tightened up their midfield a little bit, and they tightened up their defense. And look where DC United, finished. So it's good on the United folks in Washington D.C.
And Chris, one question going back to the Possession with Purpose and youth clubs. Do you have any clubs right now that you know of that are doing this and taking the statistics?
Nope, I sure don't.
Okay, so my club's going to be the first one then.
Oh, super!
And we're gonna to see what it looks like and see if it can be implemented by a youth coach, and see if we can get enough parents to volunteer and see how that works out.
Great. And the other thing, it helps parents better understand the game and keeps them away from you as a coach. I think it's extremely important for a head coach to really get the parents to understand that they have knowledge about the game. And if they don't have knowledge about the game, then they should get knowledge to the game, because then they're hurting not just their own kid maybe, but they're hurting all the other kids. We've got 3 soccer pitches right outside my back garden, and Wendy won't let me go out there. She sees my frustration. There's like 3 or 4 soccer coaches that are coaching 5 and 6 and 7 and 8-year-old kids, and for the first 10 minutes of the training session, the coach is punting the ball 30 or 40 yards away, and the kids are running after it, bringing it back. What's that about?
I have no idea.
It's like, really? And these kids are supposed to be learning soccer? And, that kind of touches on one other thing. I understand the difference between recreational, select, premier, and then as you get higher and higher, ODP and all that kind of stuff. But, every kid has an opportunity to like the game. And it's the environment that they're in is what's going to help them like the game even more or like the game even less. You know, my two sons are a good example of liking the game less. Eventually, as time passed, and they were playing the game of soccer here in the United States, it wasn't the players that got under their skin; it was the parents, other parents, that got under their skin. Mm-hmm. Because the parents were like telling them what to do, and it's like, you know, I mean, mine are 11 and 12 years old, and they grew up with football for 8 or 9 years, and they probably know more about the game of soccer than a parent standing on the sideline is ever going to know. And so, you know, to separate that out as much as possible, I think it's great that you're starting to see parents on the other side of the pitch. But, you know, this isn't me saying that they're not of value, because they are, because if they participate in the possession with purpose effort, then they're learning about the game too. And they're learning about the game in that it's not just always about scoring goals. It's how you work as a team. It's how the team plays together, how kids develop as leaders and followers, because to be a good leader, you got to be a good follower. So, you know, there's a lot to learn from the game of soccer that isn't just soccer. So, I don't know, I've probably digressed a little bit there, Ernesto, but...
No, that was good. So,
that's just me.
I mean, no, that's fine. I mean, I've taken about an hour of your time now, and I really appreciate your help with this. Just want to thank you again for coming on.
Thanks to you for the invitation, one. And two, I wish you the best of luck in putting this together and how it goes with Possession with Purpose. And
I hope you enjoyed Chris Gluck's interview, and just want to mention that if any of you take action and implement this program, I would really, really like to hear about it. I'm sure Chris would love to know about how it's going as well. As you mentioned in his interview, he said that there were no current amateur clubs currently using his program, so I'm sure he would love to see and hear about how whether it helps or not, and I'm sure that's definitely something that he wants to know about. So if any of you decide to implement this, definitely send me an email at ernesto@youthsoccerrevolution.com and let me know how it's going. You know, what problems you're having with it, how it's helping, all those things, you know, good or bad feedback. You know, I'm sure Chris would love to hear about it. Don't forget, you can get all the show notes of this podcast and all the podcasts that we have, so where you can get the links, especially with this one with Chris. He works with a lot of different blogs and newspapers and his own blog himself. And you can get all those links at youthsoccerrevolution.com. Just go to episode 12. And you'll find all the links to take you to all of Chris's work. And don't forget that if you like this show, please consider going into iTunes and giving us a 5-star review. Would definitely appreciate it. Again, this is all free information, free content for you guys to use. So if you feel like this is helping you out, please consider going into iTunes and giving us a 5-star review. Again, just one last thank you. I know I've said it a few times already, but I really, really do appreciate all the support and all the positive feedback that I've received. Again, as I mentioned earlier, just had a new baby, and so we've been really busy with that, me and my wife and our family, but definitely blessed. And again, thank you all so much for being part of this. And I'll see you in episode 13.